It's a beautiful day to blaze some good, a beautiful day to blaze some good. Would you be kind? Please light mine.
Roll up.
All right. All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Beans and Greens. And let's see. Today, drinking on usual Nescafe coffee. And if you haven't seen any of my latter videos, you would know that right now, I'm not really doing too much smoking. So I've been hitting edibles. And right now, shit. I mean, I I I did the Outdoor Boys even better because Luke would always make honey butter, while I made candied honey butter, and of course the candied honey, loaded. So it's basically two things I made. I made little honey candies, and I made candied honey butter. Videos for that they'll be on Patreon because you know YouTube. They're already dinging me for a bunch of shit right now, so I'm kind of I don't know if like it's a timeout or what or something, but either way. And yeah, so this episode is basically going to be the episode. This is something that's very sort of, I don't say, it's in everything. It's about corporate malfeasance, corporate corruption. Um, I mean, just just in total, how corporations can destroy lives. I mean, literally destroy lives. Just downright kill. And they can, they basically can just, I mean, you figure with corporations, right? They say, okay, you did a bad thing, and we gotta you gotta pay. So we're gonna give you this fine for such and such million. Now you look at a corporation. Corporations, if you don't understand, they make billions yearly. So how do you punish a corporation for the effects that it has done on society in total? So the movie we're talking about, go ahead and bring that up. Dark Waters. All right, so this one's a little bit different from the other movies in the sense that it's not really an action movie. It's more of a sort of not even really a suspense movie. It's just an informative reinterpretation, fictional reinterpretation of live events, because this is actually stuff that happened. And what we know, this is about DuPont and the substance called Teflon. Now, Teflon being something that was used for nonstick, right? And then I could remember when it was like all of a sudden out of the blue, it was no longer good to use anything with Teflon on it. And this is the nonstick stuff. I don't know what they use now for nonstick pans, but certainly isn't Teflon. Now, what we see in this movie is we see a company, a DuPont, that created this this substance, and I believe initially it was created for something for war, right? And isn't that how most of the things, um, most of the things that we use in society all start out with for war? I mean, shit, all on the internet, and that started out as a military, military thing. So, so now you have this substance that was created. Now, what does a corporation do? Their bottom line is to make profit, nothing else. That's they're not to take care of society. As a matter of fact, the idea of a corporation is to make profit regardless of its effects on society, which is exactly what we see here. Because you have this company, DuPont, right? And what do? They create these factories, right? And they go to these towns, these towns that, I mean, essentially white ghettos, if you think about it, because these are towns that don't with not a lot of industry. So it's it's just wild because now the corporation is in this town, and as you see in this movie, with the one thing that we know from American media, that American media is the only media that's allowed to run like ads and stuff, propaganda ads for like pharmaceuticals and things like that. So you have a whole town that's basically run on a propaganda that this corporation is basically good for the town. It employs pretty much everybody in the town. It it has it they have a lot of, and this is very sort of diabolical and smart at the same time of corporations, because they come into a town, and what do? They donate a lot of services along with their 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 factory, and then they provide you with jobs, and pretty much the town is run by this corporation. If they don't outright own it, they own sort of all of the things that make the town run. You know what I mean? And you think about it, it's diabolical and smart at the same time. Now, who's gonna question? Even when, as you see in this movie, there are a lot of questionable deaths. There are a lot of questionable actions. There are a lot of questionable things, like they had these pregnant women that that the company pretty much knew that them working closely with these chemicals would affect their pregnancies. Now they took them off the line, didn't tell them why, and then put them back on the line. Then, because here's what we see for all the corporations: they maximize their profits, they minimize their uh, um, what's the word? They minimize any kind of negative effects that the corporate owners, the trustees, and the people that basically run the corporation, they minimize any kind of, I don't know what's the best word. If anything happens, they minimize any effects that they'll feel. Now, a lot of that has to do with just basic. It's sort of like a thin blue line for cops, where in the corporate culture, It's not to, I mean, to tell his secrets. You know, it's even you can you could even, you know, you can be sued, right? And then so that's where we see where they take these pregnant women off the line of dealing with these chemicals that creates the Teflon, and they can get away with not telling them that it could affect their pregnancies. Now they have this substance, which again, like I mentioned, was created for it was created during war. So now you have this corporation that says, okay, let's put it towards other uses. And one of the other uses is something where people consume and will consume this. Now I don't ever really remember, like, this is sort of crazy to think about it, but I don't ever really remember hearing anybody dying from actual using. I think it was more along the lines of something that was getting your system and doesn't affect you right away. There's long term effects. So in that sense, you couldn't necessarily track, but they were able to track for those who worked with the stuff immediately. The people, like I mentioned before, like those pregnant women that were pulled off the line, and the scientists who were created the substance. There was shit, the people that died. But even more so, and this is something that we're affected with nowadays, something a little bit different, but the effects that the power the plant that made the Teflon, the effects that that factory had on the actual town. Besides, you know, obviously, you know, they give you a job, they give you services like um, babysitting services. You know, they offer services like that. So you have that, but then on the other hand, all the chemicals that you're using, that stuff has to go somewhere, right? So what do? They dump the chemicals in the water supply. They dump the chemicals in landfills in that area, and what happens? It starts to affect not only the land and the water, but then the people, you know, that use the land, use the water, animals. Because what we see is there's our farmer, crazy shit. The farmers, animals just started dying, and that's how we get started on the court case, because this is about a court case, and Mark Ruffalo plays a lawyer, and he plays a lawyer that comes from a backwoods town, I guess. I don't know if you want to call it that. It's Virginia, and family members, his grandmother recommends him to one of these farmers whose animals are dying. Now the animals are ingesting water from this creek that's getting that's having all these chemicals dumped into, and these animals are just acting weird. I mean, there's one scene where you see the cow is sort of rabid, and they have to kill the cow because, you know, all the chemicals and shit made it rabid, and it shows the the farmer shows the lawyer Mark Ruffalo. He wants to see his cows. And he's like, okay, sure, I'll show you where the cows are. And he shows his field and nothing but little raised graves where the farmer had to basically bury his cows. Now it's crazy because what you notice is people in that town, because it's a scene where Mark Ruffalo's driving to the town and he's looking at these little girls riding bikes. And the little girl smiles at him and doesn't think nothing of it at the time. But in a flashback later on, he remembers as he's looking at this little girl smile, when she opens her mouth, she doesn't have any teeth. She's a grown, she's not grown, she's probably like 12. Supposed to have a full mouth, but she didn't have any teeth. Because not only were they dumping chemicals from the Teflon, but they were also dumping fluoride into people's water supply. Now, again, how can you question how can you question that? Or who's going to question that? Because number one, not putting two and two together. It's just a normal, everyday, just person going to work, trying to raise a family. And then two, this is a company that employs pretty much everybody in the town. So if you put that in jeopardy, then now how are people going to take care of themselves? Which, as you see in the movie, which is just, again, like I said, is so diabolical. As you see in the movie, that farmer who initiated the court case with Mark Ruffalo starts to get ostracized from the people in his town because they know he's the one trying to sue them, and they're like, you're screwing up, our lives. You're screwing up the golden goose, basically. Let me see. I took some notes, but now how one of the correlations that we see nowadays is because one, we know not just from this case of how these factories, how they affect the environment around them. It's not just for Teflon, pharmaceuticals, right? Then now we have these data centers, these AI data centers, which they put into a neighborhood such as they have, and it's always sort of because these guys, the neighborhood it was a middle class. It wasn't a poor. So, but that's the thing. They go into these middle class neighborhoods, these poor neighborhoods, and just put these centers there. And in this case, same thing with the factories, and all the resources that these factories use up and have to destroy affect the people in the towns, and there's no recourse because one, the government, the government doesn't give a shit about the people, really, honestly. We got to be real about it. And it's the people in the government that have ownership in these corporations. It's either ownership in corporations or they will have ownership in corporations when they get, when they're done being a politician, or they get kickbacks as politicians, or even some of all of it. Yeah, it's I don't know. It, I keep sort of hitting to the same point in all of the in all of the videos and shit that I make. The government doesn't really give a shit about us. So it's not far fetched to say that these corporations, they specifically search for environments such as as we see in this movie, and even to now, what the AI data centers, because one, it's rich in resources. You know, obviously that's something they need. Two, it's you know put into an area where the people are so desperate, you just throw a little bit of money at them, you can do whatever. And that's ultimately at the end of the day, because you look at it, you look at the corporations, you look at the governments, you look at the rich families, these trillionaires and billionaires, and everything is everything. All the movies they make is not about making more money. It's always it's because they got money, they got all the money, they have all the resources, control of all the Reese's, the control of all the resources. They control the implementation and the creation of money. It's all about control. And it's crazy how these people are so willing to destroy the environment in order for, because again, it can't be for financial gain. They already have the money, so what is it about? And so destroy the environment. They still have to live in it as well. So what does an underground bunker offer you more? What does living underground offer you more than just living above ground in a healthy environment? That's the one thing I always wonder. Like, these corporations, right? These people don't live in these neighborhoods, but stay. When you watch the movie, you understand this. The DuPont company, they knew for decades, going all the way back to the 50s, 60s, because again, this was used for war, right? So it was around World War II, which ended in 1948. So they knew the negative effects that this would have on people. Their scientists studied it, and as you see in the movie, they weren't the only company that were using. It was a chemical that was used in Teflon, and they weren't the only other company using DuPont. It was another company called 3M, and their scientists found out as well that this chemical that they used in Teflon was very toxic to people. Same thing with the fluoride. All these companies known for years that all this stuff is toxic to people, but they keep putting it in the substances we consume on a daily basis. They knew. So why cover it up? And again, it can't just be for money. Because, I mean, DuPont, by the 50s and 60s, all the money DuPont made from war. I mean, these corporations and these families, they have generational wealth. So it can't. Why do they put these things out there for? I mean, is it really for profit? Like, It got. I mean, it said they knew the effects. They know when you look up in the sky and you see those planes and you see it emitting like it's supposed to be contrails. That's what we normally would see, which is basically condensation, I believe. But now we see, which is normalized, chemtrails. Why are they spraying chemicals in the air? Why are they spraying um, chemicals and polluting, the water, polluting all the farmland and the ground? And then, of course, that part that isn't polluted is what they either keep for themselves or keep as to sell to us. It's about control, man. It's about control. To control the people. I mean, this you see in this movie, you see from the corporate perspective because Mark Ruffalo he plays a corporate lawyer, and in fact he's tight with the head of DuPont. In fact, the head of DuPont, as you see in this movie, celebrates him, Mark Ruffalo, becoming a corporate lawyer. Now, the corporation that his firm represented wasn't DuPont, but they all ran in the same circles. So you see the head of DuPont. You see his sort of elation with the numbers that this company has done. You see his sort of it's sort of a symbiotic relationship between him, the corporations and these corporate lawyers, right? And it basically is, the corporations need the lawyers need the corporations. So it is a symbiotic relationship. But you see it take place and how much it's like they're on another level. They speak a whole other language. They speak a whole other language, and everybody else is just here. And corporations and the lawyers and they all operate separately from the rest of us. And see, what lawyers do is they take the legal terms, they take legality, and then use that you use legalese, I guess you could say, to make the definitions, to define what's legal under certain circumstances. Yeah, this is. I mean, the movie in itself is real slow, so it isn't like it's not gonna keep you on your toes like V for Vendetta, which I did film. I did film a Patreon portion for V for Vendetta, but they took that off, copyright strike, and just said fuck it, took it off. So the YouTube V for Vendetta is up there, but the Patreon viewing of it isn't. But That's why I'm wondering if this will make the because I already filmed the Patreon portion, so definitely want to check this out. I got this gonna be on Patreon. I got some other videos on Patreon. I have the edibles video. I got another work is it flip the sample gonna be putting up on Patreon. So Patreon's gonna be full of shit. But definitely want people to see this because this is slow, but and this is just think about it. We know this stuff. This is all stuff that's nothing new, or at least we would like to think that a lot of people know. So that's why I'm saying this movie is important because a lot of people think they understand, but this movie does give you a little bit more, a bit of understanding, especially of the relationship between the corporations and the lawyers, and how the lawyers allow for corporations to get away with the most society killing actions, which this movie lays out in such chilling clarity. At the end, you see years and 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 years of DuPont just getting away with destroying people's lives, because that's essentially what it is. So destroying people's lives for profit, and then what makes this movie one of the scariest movies because the ending of it is very scary. Nothing happened to the companies. They still get to keep doing it. They get to change the name. They get to change the products, and the scientists come up with something different. So they don't use Teflon. They don't use the C8, which is the chemical that's in Teflon. So they change it. So you still have, I mean, you still have nonstick pans, but what are they using now, right? What are they using now? And that's just one corporation, right? That's just one product. I mean, we saw in the past few years with the jab, with COVID, these corporations get to do what they want. The corporations, the pharmaceutical companies, one, they get to advertise, and again, American media, Western media is the only media that would allow for pharmaceutical companies to be able to advertise on mass media like television, internet. And it's the same thing. Whenever you have towns where they have their factories, they run the town. They employ everybody. They run all the services. They provide services. And again, this is so you look at these companies as these corporations as wholesome entities that do good for society, which is what you see from the the CEO of DuPont, the CEOs of these corporations. They really feel or present the image that they feel like they're doing good with these corporations. That these corporations are doing good for societies. That these corporations are doing good for humanity. That's the sort of surface they present. But like I said, since the 50s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, these companies, these corporations, they knew the negative effects. And it's crazy because, again, like I said, I just remember hearing out of the blue these things are no good to use anymore, right? I just you always just hear that this shit that you've been using for so many years is just no longer good anymore. Out of the blue, and they say, "Oh well, this may cause cancers, or this may cause this," and if it does, there may be a class action lawsuit, and you may get money, and the corporations still got away with it because they play a little bit of money. Remember, they make billions yearly, so and when they're talking about 1 billion, 2 billion, we're talking about hundreds of billions yearly, trillions. So they pay a couple of million. They pay 50 million. That's nothing. That's discretionary funds here. And we'll keep going on. These corporations are run by people too. And what they've done is they've come together to create, and you think about it, it's called a corp. What's a corp? Dead entity. So in this case, you have an entity, a dead entity, used for life. See the juxtaposition. Corpse. Corp. I mean, even if they take it down from the Patreon, it's on Prime. It's on Amazon Prime. To give you sort of an idea, and then so you look at it. Okay, so this is chemicals, right? But like I keep saying, change the item. Go to pharmaceuticals. Go to military. Go to media. It's the same. That same. See, I'm using the term symbiotic, but incestuous relationship between the CEOs, the presidents, the people that run these corporations, and their lawyers. Sort of incestuous relationship. Because it's like lawyers need to make money, need a job, and people that run these corporations need the lawyers in order for them to have the lawyers justify the bad that the corporations do. Hell, anybody watching this, go back and look at. They have documentaries on Enron and Tyco. And the main reason for this, for saying to watch those, it obviously the similarities of what we see in the movie applies in relation to how the law and lawyers were used to justify actions taken by these corporations. But the reason why I say to watch it is not for that, just for that alone, but just to understand the societal effect that it had. Because in the movie, the DuPont plant not only affected the town, it affected the children of the people that lived in this town and their children, and it affected the town as a whole. Even if you didn't work in the plant, it affected you, and it was long lasting. So it affected the people that work there. It affected all the ancillary people, and this is long lasting, and it could stretch even beyond the borders of that town. Now with Enron and Tyco, theirs was more financial because they used investors' money to prop up their stocks, and then when the stocks fell, all these people's money. I mean, talking about like investors, like everyday investors, people, pension funds and things like that. They lost all that money, so that affected thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So the negative effects that these corporations have affect society negatively and largely as a whole, but they always benefit a small amount of people. And I mean, you see that in the movie. So if you don't get to see the Patreon portion, which please go ahead check it out. If you don't get to see that, at least check out the movie and check out those two documentaries on those two movies. I have to basically Google it, and it's probably there for free. Again, documentary on Tyco, Tyco, and Enron, Enron. Those are corporations, companies. Now, I think they might even have it where both of them are in one documentary. And then watch the movie. And you get a little bit better idea. I just. Anyway. Yeah, this is a very, very important movie. Now, anybody watching this, if you'd like, please go ahead and dealing with another corporation, corporation of YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe and like and do all of that stuff, and then head over to Patreon. A little $5 to subscribe. But there's tons of shit already on there, and it's gonna be more shit on there coming up. I just slowed down a little bit again because I was dealing with some illnesses, but yeah, man, it's a bummer. That's what doing these sometimes. You get you get bummed out because, like, if you look at all the other movies that have on there, you have movies like Judge Dredd, right? It's a fun movie. It's exciting. It's action. It's nostalgia because you got Sylvester Stallone. But then if you look at the actuality about it or actual thing about it, you know these the cops are out in society right now, and they can just do whatever they want to you and get away with it. It's corporations, right? It's exciting and fun, and everybody wants to be part of a corporation, and there's money involved, and you especially when you're doing YouTube, there's corporations that are sponsors, and but it's destructive to society as on a whole. How art is being used, how art has changed, how art is being influenced by corporations. Yeah, just watch the fucking movie. Anyway, the day is long, the sun is hot. You might as well smoke if you got some pot. I'm out.